Hello and welcome back to another episode of a weekly Waypoint. Today we are playing Old School RuneScape because I am playing Old School RuneScape. That's right, the wheel of serotonin has spun once again and it has decreed that number go up shall be the thing that we do in Old School RuneScape. I bought a year's membership about 5 months ago, so I thought I should probably try and make some use out of that instead of just paying for more time than I need. But honestly, I think what got me into it, if this seems like a sudden left turn to you, is if you recall last week I was talking about fishing in Final Fantasy XIV and how I was addicted to it. That had a very RuneScape feel to it in terms of, you know, training a skill by catching some gill. Oh, I'm sorry, that was bad. But yeah, I've been getting back into it, did the old load it up, go what the hell was I doing, I've forgotten my bank pin, etc, etc. Now if you've been listening to the weekly Waypoint over the last few weeks, you will know that I have developed a some would say neurodivergent obsession with spreadsheets. And of course eventually this will pass and I will fall into forgetting to update them and forgetting that they exist or finding them a chore so I'll stop using them, etc, etc. But right now everything is spreadsheets all of the time, and while I had already established a spreadsheet for my different RuneScape characters and all of their levels, I have now added tabs to those spreadsheets including quest completion, collection log completion, achievement diary completion. It's still pretty much all checkboxes, but at the end of the day, it's really satisfying to make and it, you know, motivates me to play more. But lest you be concerned that I'm just going to ramble about a game that I've already sunk thousands of hours into and have nothing new to say about, no. Because alongside RuneScape, or even at the same time as playing RuneScape, I have been playing some more Dragon Quest VII Fragments of a Forgotten Past on my Nintendo 3DS. Why am I talking like this? That's right, I parked my ass at Sand Crabs and I grinded dungeons. As you may or may not be aware, I picked up Dragon Quest VII almost 2 years ago now, back when it was first announced that they were shutting down the eShop, and I panicked and I went, oh no, the physical price for these games is gonna skyrocket, and it hasn't. I checked yesterday and they're still at £35 pretty easily in the UK. I hear that they are a lot more rare in America, or in American regions, I guess I should say. But to give you an extremely quick previously on with my adventures exploring the Dragon Quest franchise, I played a little bit of 9 when I was fairly young, back when that first came out on DS. I played, you know, some Dragon Quest Builders 1 and 2. I played a decent amount of Dragon Quest 11, although I can't truly say that I got to the end of Chapter 1, because I don't know if there are hard cut-offs for chapters, or if that's just kind of like a point in the story which everyone has decided is the end of a chapter. I've played some Dragon Quest 1, and I have played some Dragon Quest VII, and I'm telling you this because I'm going to talk about the Dragon Quest games as a whole, excluding Builders. I just threw that in for fun. I'm starting to realise that with the Dragon Quest games, while Dragon Quest VII is a particularly slow burn, they all, or at least all the ones I have played, seem to be a slow burn in terms of like, you start playing, and for like the first 10 to 20 hours, it's just a pretty decent RPG. But then, at around the 20th hour mark, it like, the story gets interesting, like not fascinating, but interesting, and systems start to open up, and just kind of in a non-quantifiable way, this is around a time in the game when it gets its hooks into you, and you go, oh shit, I'm not just having a good time with this game anymore, I'm having a fucking fantastic time with this game now, and I need it in my veins. I need to spend every waking hour with this game. I know Dragon Quest VII gets a decent amount of criticism compared to other games in the franchise for its pacing, for being too slow, for being, I would say, tonally a little bit too lighthearted or disconnected, one might say. It feels like a series of short stories, but I'm getting to the point in the world where it feels like those short stories are starting to connect in a really fun and interesting way, and I am locked in. I know enough about myself to not promise that I'm just going to play it through till the end at this point, but having finished Final Fantasy 1 and 2, which admittedly are way shorter games, I am starting to feel a little bit more confident in my ability to complete an RPG. I feel like I am getting better at kind of like training that part of my brain to persevere and go, no, come on, we're playing through this, we're finishing this. Like, I would have finished Yakuza Like a Dragon if it hadn't been for some severe pacing issues at the end, which I've already complained about. If you're curious to see what my thoughts on the game are, I have a really fun idea for a video at the very end, where I kind of go back and talk through the story beat for beat and kind of like talk about my adventure in a sense. So I'm looking forward to making that whenever I do finally finish Dragon Quest VII. But in the meantime, I have a Twitter thread where I take pictures of my 3DS screen with my phone and react, and I do the little like sensitivity warning on spoilers and stuff. But of course, if you do go and look at that thread and you have no idea what's happening in Dragon Quest VII, you are going to get like story structure spoiled for you, like, oh, clearly at this point, you know, he's in an area that looks like this, or clearly at this point his party looks like this. Still, it's a really fun time, and according to How Long to Beat, it's a 100-hour long game, and I'm on hour 20, so I'm only a fifth of the way through. But I did pick it up around hour 10 when I most recently picked it back up to continue playing, so take from that what you will. It's funny as well because I really want to play Dragon Quest IV for some reason now as well. Specifically, I just saw gameplay footage of it and I was like, man, like, I like the look of Dragon Quest VII, don't get me wrong, on 3DS. I know some people don't. I think it looks decent. And, another unpopular opinion, I think it helps having the 3D on in that game. It's got some really lovely 3D effects in terms of what it does with text boxes lifting off the screen, and just the general depth of the visuals in the world. Even though to look at it, the overworld is pretty flat and basic. But I saw gameplay of Dragon Quest IV on DS and I was like, I prefer that visual style when it's less 3D, it's more sprite based. Just the pixel art looks really, really nice, and I'm looking forward to playing that at some point. We did dabble with it on Dimension Jam, but we had some issues, some technical issues I think with the VOD, and we just kind of made the decision to jump ahead to Dragon Quest V instead. Reese, by the way, is currently playing Dragon Quest XI, which I got him for his birthday because I'm such a good friend. So our Discord right now is just like a tennis match of like Dragon Quest VII, Dragon Quest XI, Dragon Quest VII, Dragon Quest XI of us like talking about it. It's a wonderful time to be a Dragon Quest fan right now, just personally. It's actually a pretty bad time to be a Dragon Quest fan right now because they announced a bunch of stuff nearly 3 years ago and they haven't mentioned it since, and we're going, please say the words Dragon Quest. In fact, that's kind of where this came from. I'm really thirsty for Dragon Quest X news, or Dragon Quest 12 news, or Dragon Quest 3 2D HD news, and I just kind of stepped back and said to myself, Christian, you haven't played most of these fucking games, so go continue playing Dragon Quest VII. Oh, I just realised also last week I did mention trying Dragon Quest Tactics, so I might have talked about some of this before. Apologies. But you got the full nerd out session in this video. And what's that? Oh, I've just been logged out of RuneScape. Okay, log back in. Click crab, continue. Back to Dragon Quest. Anyway, on the back half of this video, I want to talk about that Xbox podcast, and I'm not putting this front and center and making it all the metadata like I did last week because, once again, this happened a little while ago now and it's probably old news to most people, but damn it, I want to give you my take with a capital T. So they mentioned that it's not the big rumours of Xbox porting every single exclusive over to other consoles and maybe even stepping out of making hardware, you know, the rumours went a little bit crazy. People kind of lost their shit because they're all calm and collected people with the ability to view things from an objective standpoint. Phil Spencer confirmed that 4 exclusives, which will, quote, make sense, unquote, will be heading to other consoles at some point soon, and they will all be over a year old, and I'm pretty sure it was leaked that those 4 are like Sea of Thieves, Grounded, Pentiment, and Hi-Fi Rush. But because Phil Spencer himself didn't unveil what titles those were in the podcast, it very much felt like, you made us wait a week for this? Like, this is nothing, but I think that's probably partially the point. That being said, I also respect that he was like, oh, you know, they've got their own announcements and I don't want to spoil anything because I don't want to basically leak the announcements for them when they've put work into that. And I can respect that, you know, like, obviously it makes this particular announcement and podcast feel a bit pointless and flat, but in the long term, I think especially like from his position, like he's not taking the wind out of their sails by just being like, oh yeah, it's these games. He wants them to, like, you know, in a few weeks or a few months actually be able to have their big announcement. And also I'm imagining some of them are lined up in a future Nintendo Direct somewhere. But yeah, the vibe I got from this is that they're very much just going to see how it goes from a business standpoint. And it was like I predicted last week. It's basically like, hey, we get to sell those games elsewhere and then like kind of entice people over to Xbox in terms of, oh, if I had an Xbox, I'd be able to play it on Game Pass, blah 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 blah. We'll see what else Game Pass has, or Xbox have, or whatever. Selling on your competitor's platform to advertise your own What a concept. I can't imagine ever doing that in the year of our Lord 2024. What's that? Don't look at Sony putting their older games on PC. That's completely different. Phil did mention the layoffs. And you might be wondering, Christian, you complained a lot about Phil Spencer and his position as CEO when the layoffs were announced. How are you feeling about what he said in this podcast? Well, Phil's not such a bad... No, just kidding. I was not convinced by what he said about the layoffs because he was talking about that, it's a growing industry, and when the industry doesn't grow as it hasn't in the last few years, it results in layoffs, and fair enough. That's the capitalistic system in which we live in, but I still don't understand why it's okay for him and other Microsoft executives to be paid these crazy bonuses and these crazy salaries when they can't apparently afford to keep these positions open. I mean, my absolutely crazy, take is, hey, if you can't grow, then just maintain until you can continue to grow, instead of cutting jobs and ruining people's livelihoods, etc, etc. But I'm screaming into the wind at that point. But there is precedent for a CEO of gaming taking a pay cut to keep their workers on board. And it was a different country and it was a different culture, sure, but I still think that there is a lot that could be learned from that situation. Anyway, another thing they mentioned in the podcast was that they were originally going to take this time to talk about the Activision merger, and all we really got out of that was that Diablo 4 is coming to Game Pass at the end of the month. I kind of wish we got the original version of this podcast because, I would have liked to have heard more about what are their philosophies regarding merging with Activision, or I guess absorbing Activision, or whatever they would say with more positive connotations. And it would probably be stuff we would expect to hear, but I would still enjoy hearing it. Also, I know that behind the scenes it is more complicated than just flicking on the Game Pass button, but I'm still a little bit like, oh, the one game? I'm excited because it means Reese gets to play Diablo 4 now, and I want Reese to see what that game's like. I'm just like, oh, just a one? We're not going to do the cool, big 60-plus games drop or whatever people were expecting. That's kind of, I'm a little bit worried that they're going to Disney Vault this, and, because it would make sense for them from a business perspective to trickle them out over months. Sure, maybe it does take time to get these individual games available on Game Pass from a technical standpoint or from an economical standpoint or something, but it would also make a lot of sense for them to all be ready to go and just oh, but if we put out 5 games this month and then 5 games the next month, that's 2 months that we're going to have people subscribed instead of 1. I don't know, just give us the influx. I would prefer the influx of games. That being said, if we're doing a Call of Duty a month, I could maybe get on board with that. They also mentioned that they have a new system coming at the end of the year, and it's probably this cloud streaming device that they've been talking about for a while, except wait, didn't that get cancelled? That's kind of exciting, actually. Maybe that'll get cancelled. If it did get cancelled, that would lend some credence to the theories that people are suddenly coming out with about an Xbox handheld of some sort. And to be honest, I could see Microsoft going that direction for the first time in ages because they don't have a competitor in Sony. The PS Vita died a painful death. They don't necessarily have a competitor in Nintendo because while the Switch is a handheld console, it's a hybrid console. It's not exclusively handheld, but then maybe that's what this new device would be as well. But I don't know, I kind of feel like maybe they've looked at the Steam Deck and gone, wouldn't it be cool if we could have an Xbox version of this, a Microsoft version of this? And I don't think a device like that would be as good. But I have to wonder if they're not cooking up it's not a handheld spin-off thing with its own games, it's another Xbox Series console. It just plays your games at 720p on a smaller screen or something. Or at 1080p if you want to enable cloud streaming instead. I could see that being a thing they go for. And while I personally wouldn't be picking one of these up, I think it would be interesting if they tried this. If it just comes out to be a handheld streaming only thing, I'm just gonna be so bored. The PlayStation... oh god, what even was it? The PlayStation Portal or something? That thing's been out since November of last year, by the way. Have you heard anyone talking about it? Because I sure as shit haven't. But then I'm not really in the blue platform spheres right now, so who knows. Anyway, the last thing I really want to talk about regarding this podcast update was... they did mention that they're going to start looking towards designing the next generation console. And I'm not going to get too swept up in the language here, but they said they want it to be the biggest, or they said that it will be the biggest technological leap ever. And I think that is a direct target towards how people very commonly feel about the leap from Xbox One to Xbox Series X and PS4 to PS5, which is it wasn't really a leap. That being said, I can't fathom what would make this next generation a big leap, let alone the biggest ever. I think it's diminishing returns at this point, and I can't point to any particular technology and say, oh yeah, that's clearly what's going to make it happen. So yeah, this is probably marketing talk, but you know what would be fun? It would be fun if they had something up their sleeves. Like, I know they said this about the Xbox Series X, that this was going to be the biggest platform leap ever. It's obviously just marketing talk, but what if they have a secret weapon and a secret kind of like idea for what they're going to do? Also, this was definitely thrown in there to kind of not say, oh yeah, we're still making hardware, and instead say, our next generation console is going to be super awesome, to say we're still making hardware and it's going to be great. But I just like to imagine, you know, what if? What if? Either way, I'm going to need a few pay rises between now and whenever that comes out if I'm ever going to be able to afford it, so I'm not looking too far into the future right now. Anyway, this has been another episode of A Weekly Waypoint. I hope you've enjoyed watching me do whatever it is I'm doing. I am doing a rare recording the commentary before the footage this week. So, have I been doing Guardians of a Rift? Have I been doing Temporos? Have I been doing Wintertot? I have no idea. You can tell me in the comments down below if you like. I will see you in whatever I make next. Have a fantastic week.